In the heart of the city, where glass towers reach for the heavens and the sounds of ambition echoed off the streets, William sat ensconced in his opulent office. The room was a reflection of his success: polished mahogany desks, plush leather chairs, and a view that looked down upon the bustling streets below. Yet, despite this grandeur, William felt an emptiness that no amount of wealth could fill. His gaze was fixed on a photo of Margaret, his late wife, framed elegantly on his desk. She smiled back at him, her eyes sparkling with warmth, a stark contrast to the cold reality he faced. It had been 6 months since her passing, and the ache in his chest had not dulled. He felt trapped in a gilded cage, surrounded by the trappings of success, yet devoid of any real connection or purpose. The laughter they once shared now echoed hollowly in his mind, replaced by the silence of his office. He absently traced the outline of her face in the photograph, the memory of her laughter a bittersweet reminder of what he had lost. William, his assistant, Sarah, peeked into the office, her expression a blend of concern and professionalism. "You have another meeting in 10 minutes. Right," he replied, his voice unsteady. He forced himself to turn away from the photo and focus on the stack of documents before him. Each paper represented another deal, another number that would add to his already overflowing wealth. Yet, as he reviewed the figures, they seemed to blur together, losing any significance. He felt like a ghost haunting his own life, moving through the motions without truly living. As the day wore on, he attended meetings filled with discussions about profits, market shares, and strategic partnerships. The words floated around him like smoke, intangible and devoid of meaning. He was a figurehead, a man whose presence commanded respect, but inside, he felt like a shadow. When the final meeting concluded, William gathered his things, his heart heavy with a familiar sense of dread. He stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut with a finality that matched his mood. The city outside was alive with energy, a stark contrast to his internal turmoil. The streets bustled with people, each absorbed in their own lives, their own stories. As William emerged from the building, he felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. He walked past shops flashing bright advertisements, the scent of street food wafting through the air, but nothing could penetrate the fog that enveloped him. Turning a corner, he was suddenly confronted by a sight that stopped him in his tracks. A homeless woman sat on the sidewalk, her clothes tattered and dirty, her hair matted and unkempt. She held a sign that read, "Anything helps," her eyes a deep well of sorrow and desperation. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as their gazes locked. William felt a jolt of something he hadn't experienced in ages: empathy. It was an emotion long buried beneath layers of grief and isolation. As he stood there, he could see the humanity in her eyes, a reflection of his own pain. He had spent so long in his bubble of wealth, surrounded by people who catered to his every need, that he had forgotten what it was like to connect with someone. "What do you want?" he found himself asking, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman looked up, surprise flickering across her features. "Just a little hope," she replied, her voice cracked and weary. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." William hesitated, battling with the instinct to walk away, to dismiss her as just another face in the crowd. But something inside him stirred, an unfamiliar impulse urging him to act. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, his heart racing as he counted out $300 in cash. It was an absurd amount for a moment like this, yet he felt an overwhelming need to bridge the chasm between them. "Here," he said, extending the bills toward her. The woman blinked in disbelief, her eyes widening. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Yes, I am," he replied, surprising himself with the conviction in his own words. "Please take it." With hesitant hands, she accepted the money, her fingers brushing against his. A spark of connection ignited in that fleeting moment, a shared understanding of suffering that transcended their vastly different worlds. William felt a strange sensation wash over him, a warmth spreading through his chest where there had only been coldness. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This means more than you know." He nodded, unsure of how to respond, and turned to walk away, the weight of the encounter lingering in the air. As he stepped back into the flow of the pedestrians, he felt as though he had just crossed an invisible threshold. The city, once so hollow, now appeared vibrant, filled with stories waiting to be told. Yet, he quickly dismissed the thought, attributing the feeling to a momentary lapse in judgment. What had he just done? He was a businessman, a man who thrived on logic and reason, not impulsivity and emotion. Yet, as he continued down the street, the sense of connection remained, a thread woven into the fabric of his life that he had thought irrevocably frayed. The voices of the city surrounded him, but William found himself lost in thought. What would Margaret have said? She had always possessed a compassionate heart, urging him to look beyond the numbers and see the people behind them. He had brushed off her ideals, believing that success came from hard work and sacrifice. But now, in her absence, he questioned everything. He arrived at his car, the luxurious vehicle a stark reminder of the life he had built. As he sank into the leather seat, he couldn't shake the image of the woman from his mind. Her eyes had held a story, a life he could never fully understand, yet they had connected in that brief exchange. As he drove through the city streets, the lights flickering past him, William felt a stirring deep within, an urge to explore the world beyond his wealth. But as quickly as it came, he silenced it, focusing instead on the horizon where his life of luxury awaited. Yet, that day marked a pivotal moment in his existence. It was a flicker of light in the darkness, a reminder that amidst the isolation of his wealth, there still existed a world filled with hope, suffering, and the potential for connection. As he returned to his vast home, he couldn't shake the feeling that something profound had shifted within him. And as he settled into the emptiness of his grand estate, he found himself staring once more at Margaret's photo. He whispered into the silence, "What do I do now?" William woke up the next morning feeling the weight of grief pressing down on him like an anchor. The sun filtered through the heavy curtains of his luxurious bedroom, casting soft rays on the polished wood floors. He sat up in bed, the sheets tangled around him, and stared at the empty side of the bed where Margaret once slept. Their last morning together played in his mind like a film on repeat. Her laughter, the way she'd always steal the covers, the warm smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. With a heavy heart, he swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood up, feeling the chill of the floor beneath his feet. He dressed quickly, donning a tailored suit that felt too tight around his chest, as if it were a reminder of the facade he had been maintaining. The morning routine was a blur: coffee, a quick glance at his phone, and an obligatory check of emails. But today, He felt an urge to break from his monotonous routine. Today, he would visit Margaret's grave. Driving to the cemetery, William navigated through the familiar streets, his mind elsewhere. The luxury cars and sharply dressed pedestrians seemed to blur into a backdrop of his grief. He parked in front of the wrought iron gates of the cemetery, taking a deep breath before stepping out of the car. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and the distant chirping of birds. He walked through the rows of headstones, each a silent testament to lives once lived. As he approached Margaret's grave, a familiar ache settled in his chest. He knelt down, brushing his fingers over the engraved letters of her name. "Margaret," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I miss you every day." Memories flooded his mind. Dinners by candlelight, spontaneous road trips, and her unwavering support through his business struggles. He closed his eyes, letting the tears fall freely. It was then that he noticed a figure at the edge of his vision. He turned, and his heart dropped. Kneeling by the adjacent grave was the homeless woman he had encountered just the day before, Grace. Her unkempt hair fell over her face, and her clothes were tattered, but there was something almost ethereal about her sadness. Tears streamed down her cheeks, glistening in the sunlight as she pressed a bouquet of wilted flowers against the tombstone. "Who are you?" William asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the confusion evident in his tone. Grace looked up, startled. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. She paused, her breath hitching. "This is my sister's grave. She passed away a few years ago." William's heart raced. He hadn't expected to encounter her here, and the sight of her crying sent a jolt of empathy through him. "I didn't know," he replied, taking a cautious step closer. "I thought you were. How did you find this place?" Grace wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her gaze shifting to the ground. "Margaret helped me once. She didn't know me, but she offered kindness when I needed it the most. I wanted to pay my respects. She deserves that." William felt a wave of emotions crash over him. "Margaret helped you? How?" Grace took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto William's with a vulnerability that pierced his heart. "I was struggling, living on the streets. I had lost everything, my job, my home, even my family. I was desperate. One day, I was sitting outside a cafe, and she came up to me with a sandwich and a warm drink. She sat with me for a while, just talking. It was the first time someone saw me as a person and not just a beggar. I never forgot her kindness." William felt a lump at his throat. "I had no idea she had done that. She was such a good person." His voice cracked, and he fought back tears as he thought of Margaret. Grace nodded, her own tears glistening. "I wanted to thank her, but I never had the chance. So here I am, just trying to honor her memory. She made a difference in my life, even if it was just for a moment." William's mind raced. The encounter with Grace had stirred something within him, a flicker of the compassion he thought he had lost forever. "You don't need to apologize for being here," he said, his voice steadying. "If anything, I should be thanking you for sharing this with me." Grace looked up, surprise etched across her features. "Me? Why would you thank me?" "Because you remind me of who Margaret was and how she touched lives," William explained, a newfound determination igniting within him. "I've been so lost since she passed. Maybe you can help me remember her better." Grace's eyes softened, the rawness of their shared moment hanging in the air. "I never intended to be a burden. I just thought—" "No," William interrupted gently. "You're not a burden. You're a connection to her, and I think I need that connection now more than ever." They stood in silence for a moment, the world around them fading as they processed the gravity of their unexpected meeting. William felt a sense of clarity wash over him. It was as if the pieces of his life were slowly rearranging themselves, and he was beginning to see the picture clearly again. "Would you like to join me for coffee?" he asked suddenly, surprising even himself with the invitation. "I want to hear more about your story." Grace hesitated, her eyes darting to the ground. "I don't want to intrude on your time," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "It's not intruding," William insisted. "I want to hear it. I want to understand how someone as kind as Margaret could have such an impact on someone she never even met again. Please." After a moment, Grace nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in her expression. "Okay, I'd like that." William extended his arm, and together they walked away from Margaret's grave, the weight of their shared grief lifting slightly as they stepped into the future. The walk to the cafe felt different. It was no longer a journey marked by loneliness, but rather one filled with potential and connection. As they settled into a cozy corner table, William ordered 2 coffees, his heart racing with anticipation. He had a million questions swirling in his mind, and he wanted to unravel the story of the woman sitting across from him. "Tell me about your life," he began, leaning forward with genuine interest. "What happened to you?" Grace took a deep breath, her gaze falling to her hands. "It's a long story," she started, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "I grew up in a small town, and I had big dreams of becoming a teacher. I love kids, and I thought I could make a difference. But life didn't go as planned. I lost my job during an economic downturn, and then one thing led to another. I lost my apartment, and soon I found myself living on the streets." William listened intently, his heart aching for her struggles. "That must have been incredibly difficult," he said softly. "It was," Grace admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But it's not just the physical struggle, it's the emotional toll. You feel invisible, like nobody cares. And then one day, a woman like Margaret comes along and treats you like a human being. It changes everything." William nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I can only imagine how much that meant to you." "It meant the world," Grace replied, a faint smile breaking through her somber expression. "It gave me hope. And even though I've faced countless hardships since then, I always hold on to that moment." As they talked, William felt a growing sense of purpose, a realization that life could still hold meaning despite the shadows of grief. Grace's story resonated deeply within him, intertwining with his memories of Margaret. He began to see the world differently. The luxury he had surrounded himself with felt hollow compared to the richness of human connection. In that small cafe, as they shared their lives, William discovered a flicker of light in the darkness that had enveloped him for far too long. He realized that perhaps Margaret's kindness wasn't just a thing of the past. It could live on through him too, through the connections he made and the lives he touched. As they finished their coffees, William felt a sense of resolve forming within him. He wanted to honor Margaret's memory, not just in his heart, but through action, a legacy of kindness and compassion. He looked at Grace, her eyes still shining with the remnants of tears, and knew that their paths had crossed for a reason. "Thank you for sharing your story with me," he said, his voice firm. "I want to help. I want to do something meaningful in Margaret's name. Will you join me?" Grace's eyes widened in surprise, and for the first time, she smiled, a genuine smile that illuminated her face. "I would love that." In that moment, William knew he had found a purpose he thought was lost forever. Margaret's legacy would live on, not just in memory, but in action, through the lives he would touch, starting with the woman sitting across from him. William perched on a stool in the quaint cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloping him like a warm embrace. The walls were adorned with local art and photographs, each telling a story of its own. He glanced across the small table at Grace, who sat with her hands clasped, her eyes glimmering with untold stories. The contrast between their worlds was striking, yet here they were, two souls brought together by fate. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," he said, his voice slightly shaky as he broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you told me at the cemetery. I want to understand more about your life." Grace smiled softly, the warmth of her expression illuminating her otherwise worn face. "You don't have to thank me, William. I'm grateful for this chance to share my story. It's not often someone takes an interest in me." William nodded, urging her to continue. "Please go ahead. What happened to you?" Taking a deep breath, Grace began to unravel the tapestry of her life. "I grew up in a small town, not far from here. My parents worked hard, but money was always tight. I had dreams of becoming a nurse, helping people in need, just like Margaret helped me years ago." William leaned in, captivated. "What happened? How did you end up well here?" Grace's gaze dropped to the table, and for a moment, she hesitated. Life has a way of throwing curveballs. After high school, I got a scholarship to a community college. I was so excited, but then my mother fell ill. I had to drop out to care for her. I worked multiple jobs just to make ends meet. "I'm so sorry," William whispered, his heart aching for her. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was," she replied, her voice steadying. "But I pushed through. I thought I could get back to my studies once things settled down. But then my mother passed away, and it felt like the ground beneath me gave way. I lost my job, and eventually I lost my home." William's chest tightened at the thought of Grace enduring such heartache. "I can't imagine how that felt. You were so young." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I try to find help, but the system is broken. I bounced from shelters to friends' couches, but it never felt stable. One day I found myself on the street. It was like I was invisible, a ghost in my own life." "Grace," William said, his voice thick with emotion, "you're not invisible. You matter. Your story matters." A flicker of surprise crossed her face, and she met his gaze, searching for sincerity. "Why do you care?" "Most people just walk by and pretend they don't see me." "Because I've been lost too," he confessed, feeling the weight of his own grief surface. "After my wife died, I felt like I was a ghost in my own life. I didn't know how to live without her. It took seeing you that day for me to realize how disconnected I had become." "I didn't mean to bring you down," she murmured softly. "I just wanted to explain." William shook his head, feeling a surge of empathy. "No, you've done the opposite. It's making me realize how much I need to reconnect with the world. I've been so wrapped up in my own sorrow that I forgot about the struggles of others." Grace smiled, the corners of her mouth lifting gently. "It's easy to forget, especially when you're hurting. But I believe that when we share our pain, we can help each other heal." As their conversation deepened, William began to see Grace not just as a homeless woman, but as a person with dreams, aspirations, and a history that intertwined with his own in unexpected ways. He felt a flicker of purpose rekindling within him, a spark he hadn't felt since Margaret passed. "Do you ever think about the future?" he asked, curiosity piqued. "Every day," she replied with a hint of determination. "I dream of going back to school, becoming a nurse. I want to help people like Margaret helped me. I want to give back." "That's an incredible dream," he said, admiration shining in his eyes. "You should pursue it. You deserve that chance." "I don't know if I can," she said, a hint of doubt creeping into her voice. "I've been out of the loop for so long. It's hard to think about starting over. Why not start now?" he encouraged, leaning forward. "I can help. There's a charity that Margaret used to support. It focuses on education and helping those in need get back on their feet. Perhaps they can help you too." Grace's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and hope washing over her features. "You think so? I've heard of that charity. They do great work." "Yes, they do. In fact, Margaret wanted to make a difference in people's lives, and I think she would have wanted me to carry on that legacy," William said, his voice growing steadier. "This could be a way for both of us to honor her memory." A silence settled between them, thick with unspoken possibilities. Grace's heart raced as she considered the prospect of help, a lifeline thrown into her turbulent sea of despair. "William, are you sure? I don't want to take advantage of your kindness," she said cautiously. "Not at all. I want to help," he replied firmly. "You don't have to face this alone. Together, we can make a difference." "Thank you," Grace whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "That means more to me than you know." As they continued to talk, they discovered more shared values and dreams. William felt a newfound sense of purpose blooming within him, a feeling that had been dormant since Margaret's passing. He realized that helping Grace could be the catalyst for change in both their lives. "Grace," he said, his tone shifting to one of inspiration, "I want to organize a charity event in Margaret's honor. We can raise funds to support people like you, those who are struggling to find their footing. It could be a way to bring her spirit back into the world." Her eyes widened, a spark igniting within her. "That's a wonderful idea. But do you really think people would come? I mean, you're a businessman, and I'm just me." "Exactly," he replied, a smile breaking on his face. "You're just you, and that's what makes this so powerful. Your story can inspire others. People need to see the real impact of their generosity, and you can show them that they can help change lives." Grace felt a rush of hope swell in her chest. "I'd love to help. I want to be part of something bigger than myself." "Then it's settled," William declared, his voice filled with conviction. "Let's do this together." As they sipped their coffee, the atmosphere shifted, heavy with the weight of their shared mission. William felt a renewed sense of connection to the world, a step toward healing from the grief that had consumed him since Margaret's absence. Together, they would create a legacy that honored her memory and offered hope to the many who needed it most. In that cafe, amid the chatter and clinking of cups, two lives began to intertwine, and the first steps toward healing were taken. William stood in his expansive penthouse, overlooking the city's skyline, the setting sun casting an amber glow across the glass buildings. It was a breathtaking view, one that usually filled him with pride. Yet today, the beauty felt overshadowed by a sense of urgency that had been building within him since his encounter with Grace. He had spent the last few days meticulously planning a charity event in honor of Margaret, poring over details with a fervor he hadn't felt in years. He glanced at the framed photo of Margaret on the mantel, her radiant smile frozen in time. "This is for you, my love," he whispered, a hint of determination in his voice. "We're going to make a difference." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. William reached out to his network of wealthy acquaintances, each call infused with passionate descriptions of Margaret's vision for helping those in need. He spoke about the charity she had supported, a foundation aimed at providing resources for the homeless. He could feel the energy shift in each conversation. Something about Margaret's legacy ignited a spark in him that he thought had long extinguished. "William, you're serious about this?" asked Laura, one of his closest friends and business partners, her voice laced with skepticism during one of their calls. "You're really going to throw a charity gala?" "Absolutely," he replied, his own tone resolute. "Margaret believed in helping others. It's time to honor that belief, Laura. We can make an impact." He could hear the silence on the other end, then a soft sigh. "All right, count me in. Just don't lose yourself in this." William hung up, the weight of her words hanging in the air. He knew the risks, the potential for ridicule among his peers, but he felt a commitment to something greater. As the days turned into a week, the charity gala took shape. He secured a prestigious venue, enlisted a caterer known for their exquisite cuisine, and arranged for live music. Posters emblazoned with "A Night for Change" adorned the walls of the venue, promising an evening filled with hope and inspiration. Each detail was meticulously crafted, not just to honor Margaret, but to create a genuine atmosphere of compassion. On the day of the event, William stood at the entrance, his heart racing with anticipation. The venue buzzed with activity as guests began to arrive, dressed in elegant attire, their laughter and chatter blending into a symphony of excitement. He felt a mix of pride and anxiety, knowing that the success of the evening rested on his shoulders. As he greeted his guests, he spotted Grace across the room, her presence a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding them. She wore a simple, yet elegant dress, her hair neatly pulled back, and her eyes glimmered with a mix of nervousness and excitement. William waved her over, feeling a rush of gratitude for her willingness to share her story. "Grace, I'm so glad you could make it," he said, his voice warm. "Thank you for inviting me," she replied, her cheeks flushing slightly. "This is amazing." "It's just the beginning," he said, glancing around at the mingling crowd. "I want people to hear your story tonight. You have the power to inspire them, just like Margaret inspired you." Grace nodded, her expression shifting to one of determination. "I'll do my best." As the evening unfolded, William took to the stage, his heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and excitement. He looked out at the sea of faces, each one representing a potential ally in this mission to help the less fortunate. Clearing his throat, he began to speak, his voice steady. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he started, his gaze landing on Grace. "We gather not just to celebrate the life of my beloved wife, Margaret, but to ignite a change in our community." Margaret had a vision of a world where kindness transcended wealth and privilege. The audience listened intently, and he could see nods of agreement ripple through the crowd. He continued, sharing anecdotes of Margaret's compassion, her desire to uplift those who had fallen through the cracks of society. He spoke passionately about the charity they were supporting, the funds raised going directly to shelters and programs designed to help the homeless. As he concluded his speech, he invited Grace to the stage. "Now, I'd like to introduce someone who embodies the spirit of resilience and hope, someone whose life was touched by Margaret's kindness. Please welcome Grace." The applause was warm and sincere as Grace stepped onto the stage, her hands trembling slightly. William felt a surge of pride as he watched her take a deep breath and begin to speak. "Thank you, William, for this opportunity," she began, her voice quivering but growing stronger with each word. "My name is Grace, and I stand before you not just as a homeless woman, but as someone whose life was saved by the compassion of Margaret." She shared her story with raw honesty, recounting the moments of despair that had led her to the streets, the struggles of surviving day to day. But she also spoke of the light Margaret had brought into her life during a dark time. "Margaret didn't just give me money, she gave me hope. She reminded me that I mattered, that I could find my way back." Tears glistened in the eyes of many in the audience as Grace continued, her words resonating deeply. "We all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small. It starts with kindness, with empathy. Together, we can change lives." William felt a warmth spread through him as he watched Grace's authenticity touch the hearts of those present. This was what he had hoped for, a connection, a call to action. The applause that followed her speech was thunderous, a testament to the impact she had made in just a few minutes. As the evening progressed, he moved through the mingling crowd, accepting donations and sharing stories of hope. The atmosphere buzzed with energy, and William felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. Each conversation, each handshake, reinforced the idea that life could still hold meaning and joy. At the end of the night, as the last guest departed, William found Grace standing at the venue's entrance, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. I can't believe how many lives we can touch together, she said, her voice filled with wonder. Tonight was just the beginning, Grace, he replied, his heart swelling with pride. I couldn't have done this without you. As they stood together, looking out at the city lights twinkling in the distance, William felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had stepped out of the shadows of his grief to honor Margaret's legacy, and now he was ready to embrace a future filled with hope and compassion. Together, he and Grace would continue this journey, lighting the way for others just as Margaret had once done for her. In that moment, William knew that he was not just honoring Margaret's memory. He was creating a new chapter in his life, one where love, empathy, and purpose intertwined, guiding him forward into the unknown. William sat at his expansive mahogany desk, the city skyline sprawling before him like a glistening sea of opportunity. Yet, the vibrancy of the lights felt muted, overshadowed by the weight of his recent revelations. The charity event had ignited a flicker of hope within him, but whispers from his business associates began to cloud that light, casting a shadow of doubt on his newfound purpose. A sleek black phone buzzed on the desk, the screen lighting up with a message from one of his associates, Mark. We need to talk. I'm concerned about your focus lately. William sighed, running a hand through his hair. He had anticipated the backlash. After all, his colleagues thrived on profit margins and quarterly reports, not the altruistic pursuits that had begun to fill his agenda. Later that evening, he found himself in a dimly lit conference room, surrounded by the stern faces of his board members. The air was thick with tension as they discussed the implications of his recent philanthropic endeavors. William, with all due respect, began Lisa, one of his longtime partners, her voice measured but firm. It seems like you've lost sight of our primary goal. We're a business, not a charity. Who says we can't be both? William countered, a hint of frustration creeping into his tone. Margaret believed in helping others, and I want to honor her memory by making a difference. Honoring her memory is one thing. Mark interjected, his fingers steepled as he leaned forward. But if you keep diverting resources to these causes, you risk jeopardizing everything we've built. We're here to make money, William. That's our responsibility to our shareholders. The word stung, but William stood his ground. People are suffering, and I refuse to turn a blind eye because it's inconvenient for us, he replied, his voice steady but passionate. If we don't use our resources to help others, what are we doing? As he left the meeting, the weight of his associates' concerns hung heavy on his shoulders. He had always prided himself on his business acumen, but now he found himself at a crossroads. The desire to do good clashed violently with the expectations of a corporate world that thrived on profit above all else. The thought gnawed at him. Was he truly ready to sacrifice everything for a cause he believed in? The following week, William's resolve was put to the test. He was at his office late one evening, poring over financial reports when the sound of raised voices drew his attention. Curiosity piqued. He followed the noise down the corridor, stopping just outside the door of a small conference room. Peering in, he caught sight of Mark deep in conversation with another partner, Richard. I'm telling you, we can't let William derail this company, Mark asserted, pacing the room. He's too caught up in this charity nonsense. We need to stay focused on the bottom line. Richard leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I get that, but have you seen the impact of the event? People are actually responding positively. We could leverage that. Leverage? Mark scoffed, his voice lowering as he leaned in conspiratorially. I'm talking about cutting corners to maximize our profit margins. If we can funnel some of the charity funds back into our projects, we'd be better off. William's heart raced as he listened, a sense of dread washing over him. The words cutting corners echoed in his mind like a warning bell. He had suspected that some of his partners were more interested in profit than principle, but hearing it articulated like this felt like a betrayal. He stepped back, his mind racing. How could he confront them without jeopardizing everything he had built? Summoning his courage, he pushed open the door and strode in. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice steady but betraying a hint of anger. Both men turned, surprise etched on their faces. "William," Mark said, forcing a smile. "We were just discussing the upcoming project timelines." "Cut the crap, Mark," William interrupted, his patience wearing thin. "I heard you. I know what you're planning, and it stops here." Richard exchanged a glance with Mark, a smirk playing on his lips. "What's the problem, William?" "We're just trying to ensure the company stays profitable by compromising our integrity." William shot back, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "You're willing to exploit the charity's mission for your own gain. That's not business. That's corruption." "Corruption? Come on, William. You're being dramatic," Mark said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We're all in this to make money. You can't let some emotional connection to a homeless woman cloud your judgment." At the mention of Grace, William's anger flared. "Grace is not just some homeless woman. She represents everything we should be fighting for. You've lost sight of what really matters." The tension in the room thickened, and for a moment, it felt as though the air had been sucked out. Richard chuckled, a mocking sound that only fueled William's anger. "You're not going to save the world, William. This is a business, and you need to start acting like it." "Maybe it's time for a change in leadership," William replied, his voice unwavering. "If you can't support the mission we've undertaken, perhaps you shouldn't be a part of this company. I won't stand by while you undermine everything we've worked for." Mark's expression shifted from amusement to anger. "You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this." William felt a sense of clarity wash over him, a resolve that had been building ever since he met Grace. "I'd rather regret losing money than lose my integrity. I'll take my chances." As he walked out of the room, he could hear their whispers, the doubt and scorn spilling from their lips. But he felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The choice had been made. He would prioritize doing what was right over what was profitable, no matter the cost. Outside the building, the street lights flickered against the backdrop of the night sky. William took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs. He pulled out his phone and dialed Grace's number, hoping she would answer. She picked up on the second ring, her voice warm and inviting. "William, is everything okay?" "Not exactly," he replied, feeling the heaviness of the conversation ahead. "I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course." "Where are you?" she asked, concern lacing her tone. "Can we meet at our cafe?" he suggested, his heart racing at the thought of sharing the turmoil that had enveloped him. "Absolutely. I'll be there soon," she said before hanging up. As he made his way to the cafe, William reflected on the path he had chosen. The memory of Margaret filled his mind, her laughter echoing in his heart. He had spent so long lost in grief, but now he felt alive again, driven by a purpose that transcended his previous life of luxury and isolation. Arriving at the cafe, he spotted Grace sitting at their usual table, a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. The light from the overhead lamp cast a warm glow around her, and for a moment, he was struck by how much she had come to mean to him. He joined her, and without hesitation, she reached out to grasp his hand. "What's going on, William? You look troubled," she said softly, her eyes searching his. Taking a deep breath, he recounted the confrontation with his partners, the ethical dilemmas they had presented, and the choices he now faced. Grace listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to admiration. You stood up for what you believe in, she said, her voice unwavering. That takes courage. Does it? He asked, feeling a mix of uncertainty and hope. I'm terrified of what this could mean for my business, for everything I've built. Grace squeezed his hand gently. Sometimes, the right choice isn't the easiest one, but you have a chance to make a real difference, William. Don't let fear hold you back. Her words resonated deep within him, igniting a flicker of determination he hadn't felt in years. He realized then that his life had become more than just wealth and status. It had transformed into a journey of purpose, driven by the legacy of love and kindness that Margaret had left behind. Thank you, Grace, he said, his voice steady. Your support means more to me than you know. As they sat together, William felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. He was ready to face the consequences of his choices, to embrace the challenges that lay ahead. With Grace by his side, he felt invincible, ready to take on the world, one compassionate step at a time. As William sat in his spacious office on the 57th floor, the skyline of the city twinkling like a field of stars, he felt the weight of his decision pressing on him. The walls, adorned with expensive artwork and framed accolades, felt suffocating, reminders of a life that once sparkled with ambition and success. Now, they seemed to mock him. He had come to a crossroads, one that had been carved out of desperation and renewed purpose since meeting Grace. With a deep breath, he gathered the evidence he had meticulously compiled over the past week. It was incriminating. Documents that detailed his partner's unethical dealings, emails that hinted at corruption, and financial reports that painted a grim picture of their company's trajectory if things continued as they were. He felt a mix of dread and exhilaration. This was not just a risk. It was a leap into the unknown, a plunge into the turbulent waters of corporate justice. He glanced out the window, watching the cars below move like ants, oblivious to the turmoil swirling in his heart. The thought of his partner, Martin, being exposed felt like a betrayal, yet the reality of what Martin was doing weighed heavily on William's conscience. He had built his empire on principles of integrity, and yet, here he was, standing on the brink of abandoning those very ideals. The thought of Margaret's kind heart flashed through his mind. She had always believed in helping others, even when it was difficult. He picked up his phone and dialed Grace's number, feeling an urge to share his next steps with her. Her voice was warm and inviting when she answered, a soothing balm for his frayed nerves. William, is everything okay? Grace, I need to talk to you. It's important, he replied, his voice steady despite the churning inside him. Of course. Are we meeting at the cafe? Yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes. The cafe was a small, cozy place, filled with a rich aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries. As he entered, he spotted Grace at their usual table, her hair framing her face in soft waves, a hint of determination in her eyes. She smiled brightly, and he felt the warmth of her presence envelop him. It was grounding, a reminder that there was still good in the world, even amidst his chaos. William, you look serious, she noted, concern etching her features as he took a seat across from her. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I've decided to confront Martin about the corruption. I can't let his actions continue to jeopardize the charity or the people we're trying to help. Grace's eyes widened, and for a moment, silence stretched between them. Then she nodded slowly, a determined look settling on her face. That's brave, William. Were you prepared for the fallout? I have to be. I can't stand by and let this continue. It's not just about the charity anymore. It's about integrity. It's about what Margaret would have wanted. Her gaze softened, and she reached across the table, placing her hand on his. You're doing the right thing. Whatever happens, I'll be here to support you. Encouraged by her faith in him, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They spent the next hour discussing strategies, weighing the potential consequences, and building a plan for how he would approach the confrontation. Grace's insights were invaluable, her perspective shaped by her own hardships. She understood the stakes, the risks, and the strength it took to stand up for what was right. As they finished their coffee, he felt lighter, as if the weight of the world had shifted slightly. He stood, a newfound resolve surging through him. "Thank you, Grace. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're not alone in this, William. Remember that." With their meeting concluded, William returned to the office, his heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and determination. He steeled himself for the confrontation, knowing it would not be easy. Martin was not just a business partner, he was a friend. But the lines had been drawn, and William was ready to stand firm in his conviction. The following day, he called Martin into his office. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air crackling with unspoken words. Martin entered, a confident smile plastered on his face, but it faltered when he saw the serious expression on William's face. "What's going on, William? You look like you've seen a ghost," Martin quipped, trying to lighten the mood. William took a deep breath, the moment he had prepared for finally upon him. "We need to talk about the financials. I've seen some discrepancies that I can't ignore." Martin's demeanor shifted instantly. "Discrepancies? What are you talking about?" William leaned forward, placing the documents on the table between them. I know about the kickbacks, the falsified reports. We can't keep doing this, Martin. It's unethical, and it's going to ruin everything we've built." Martin's eyes narrowed, and he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms defensively. "You're overreacting. Business is business, William. You know how it works. We're just playing the game. This isn't a game." William's voice rose, anger flaring. "People's lives are at stake. The charity is at stake. I refuse to be a part of this anymore." Martin's expression darkened, and he leaned forward, his voice low and menacing. "You really think you could just walk away from this? You'll lose everything. Your reputation, your business. Is that what you want?" William's heart raced, but he stood firm, his resolve steeling him against the threats. "I'd rather lose everything than lose my integrity. I'm going to report you, Martin. I won't be complicit in this any longer." The confrontation ended explosively, with Martin storming out, his face a mask of fury. William felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. He had done it. He had taken a stand. But the repercussions were looming, and he knew he had opened a Pandora's box that would not close easily. Over the next few days, as the fallout began to unfold, William found solace in Grace's unwavering support. She was a constant presence, someone who understood the turmoil he was navigating. They met regularly, often discussing the developments or simply enjoying each other's company in a cafe that had become their refuge. One evening, after a particularly difficult day filled with media scrutiny and corporate backlash, he met Grace at the cafe, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. She looked up from her coffee, her expression instantly brightening when she saw him. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, her voice laced with genuine concern. "Awful. The board is furious. They're calling for my resignation, and I've been getting calls from reporters all day." He sank into the chair, burying his face in his hands. Grace reached out to him, her touch gentle as she placed a hand on his arm. "You did the right thing, William. Sometimes doing what's right comes with a price." "I know, but it's hard to see that when everything feels like it's falling apart. I feel like I'm losing everything I've worked for." "You're not losing everything," she insisted, her voice firm. "You're gaining your freedom, your integrity, and that's worth more than any business." His eyes met hers, and in that moment, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Grace believed in him, and perhaps that belief was enough to carry him through the storm. "Thank you, Grace. I really needed to hear that." As time passed, the public scandal surrounding Martin unraveled, exposing the depths of corruption within their company. William's bravery in standing up for what was right began to turn into a rallying cry for others within the industry. He was invited to speak at conferences, sharing his experiences and advocating for ethical practices in business. Finally, after weeks of turmoil, William returned to the cemetery, the sun setting behind him, casting a warm glow over the landscape. He approached Margaret's grave, feeling her presence envelop him like a comforting embrace. "I did it, Margaret," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "I stood up for what we believed in, for what you believed in. I hope you're proud of me." As he knelt before her grave, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had found his purpose again, not just in the fight against corruption, but in the connection he had built with grace. They were two souls intertwined by their struggles, united in their desire to make the world a better place. In that moment, he knew he had finally emerged from the shadows of despair, ready to embrace a future filled with hope, love, and the unwavering belief that together they could change lives.